What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 30 of the Silver and Gold. I'm Josh.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to be recapping how the regular season, sort of went for both teams. We're going to be starting off with the Raiders. And, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the Raiders versus Broncos game went?
Well, we were correct in our assumption that the Raiders would win this game. And they did so in pretty dominant fashion. They won the game 27-14. I'm not going to get too crazy into like stats. I've sent you a couple tweets you could probably pull up just to kind of give a little bit of context as far as the game. And also one thing about the field condition pregame. But I'll just list off the guys that popped to me, or if you want yourself, who is the viewer watching this video, if you want to go on ESPN app or whatever and look at the stats for this game, I would suggest looking at these player stats, okay? Davante Adams, Jacoby Myers, Zamir White, Trey Tucker, Aiden O'Connell, Divine Diablo, Marcus Epps, Isaiah Pola-Mao showed up in this game, especially early on. Malcolm Kuntz again, Max Crosby, Adam Butler again. Tyree Wilson had a good game. He got a sack, as did, I think, Butler, Crosby, and Kuntz. And then Trevon Merrick had the game-sealing interception in this game. They all had fantastic games, every single one of those players. And Jack Jones. Great game from him.
Who? Jack Jones.
So, obviously, this is a tweet from Jermaine Illuminor. Can you actually pull up the tweet that he's quoting?
Yes.
Because this guy, Scotty Grange, and I must apologize in advance if I sound congested or anything. I'm in like the process of getting over COVID right now. Mm-hmm. But this is how the end zone looked on the field, and this guy's Scotty Grange. I'm assuming he's a Denver insider. Maybe you could pull up his profile really quick. There you go. Okay, so bring it back. So if you don't know, now you do. But you see his tweet, and it's like, the playing surface looks awful today in Vegas. Sad. 2 thumbs down. That's a very Broncos homer sort of tweet. I get it. That doesn't look good. That definitely doesn't look good. I don't know why it would look so patchy in the end zone. I don't really have any like good excuse or anything, but my best guess is, hey, the Super Bowl is going to be held there in a couple weeks. Maybe they're getting ready for that.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So maybe they're planning to replant the grass. I don't know, because it's natural grass. It's also possible that they let it out in the sun for too long. I don't know, but I know they have a process to that. So it doesn't seem like something that would be a mistake. I have a hard time believing that, because I've never heard of that so far in the stadium. They haven't had issues like this. So I don't know. And then you can pull back to Jermaine Illuminor's tweet just to give a little bit more context here.
Wait, real quick. Did
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pull up that picture, but did you see like somebody put a side by side comparison of this and Kevin Durant's hair, like from the back? It
God,
was hilarious.
no. That's there you go. But obviously, Illuminor's saying here, been meaning to get to this. This was a picture of the field when I went to warm up pregame. He took a photo of the end zone to get some interactions. Congrats. Our grass is one of the best surfaces I've played on, and I bet any other player would say the same. So, I like. I'm not saying it's a reach because I understand. Like from his videos, it looks bad, but it also. I mean, you read his tweet and you're like, really, dude? He sounds like he's Donald Trump. The playing surface looks awful today in Vegas. Sad.
Or
You know
like
what I
a
mean?
really like a critic or like a high school bully.
Yeah, just like who cares, dude? Unless a player gets hurt because of the field conditions, which that's MetLife. That's not Vegas, you know.
Hmm.
But I appreciated Jermaine Illuminor kind of standing up for the field. And there's another tweet I sent you from Jermaine where he stands
Hmm.
up for the head coach, the current interim head coach. If you could pull that one up.
From Illuminor.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
So, also, AP is one of the best coaches I've ever had. Fuck experience. You gain that on the go. But leadership isn't something you build, it's something you're born with. Don't know how my season would have went without him, and I'll forever be grateful for him. And that's an offensive lineman. You know, that's not
Mhm.
even a defensive lineman or something like that. Like that's a guy on the offense saying AP had a big effect on my season. So, you know, I like what I hear from Illuminor, and this is a guy who's an upcoming free agent, which again I'd like to get into maybe in our next episode, but we'll see. I know that our next couple episodes are going to be very playoff heavy. Maybe after the playoffs we can get into free agents. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But you know, to see a guy who's an upcoming free agent have clearly a very uh how would you say, like he's very pro Raiders, you know. This isn't a
Mhm.
guy that sounds like he's ready to leave. He sounds like a guy who wants to stay. So I like that. Um, if there are any other things that I sent you, I guess you could just kind of send them up one by one, and then we'll move
Mhm.
on to our next topic after. In this Broncos game, the Raiders defense combined for 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 11 QB hits, 5 pass breakups, and an interception against the Broncos. Uh, it was just another dominant performance from the defense, really. But the offense looked good too. This was a game where when everything goes right, this is how good the team can be. At least with Aiden O'Connell, you know, 27-14. That's pretty damn good against a division rival. Which to end the season, the Raiders went 4-2 against the division, against the AFC West. The 2 losses being against the Chargers in Week 4 and the Chiefs, our first game against them. But Antonio Pierce went 4-1 against the division, one of those being that Chiefs game. And in getting this win, Antonio Pierce ends the season with a winning record at 5-4 overall. So that was a big thing for me, with my view towards him was if he ends the season a winner, keep him. Go right ahead. But as far as you can pull up another tweet, as far as well, I don't want to get into what the Raiders will do this offseason yet, but I expect Mark Davis to do his due diligence,
Mhm.
no matter what, and that seems to be the direction he's going in based off of what I've heard today. So
Mhm. Real quick, I want to address this tweet that you sent me. It's Isaiah Polamau consistently makes plays, yet consistently doesn't get playing time. It kind of reminds me of Hufunga's rookie year, where he was making a lot of good plays and looked solid, but maybe was like spotty. And then the next year, he made a lot of plays and was an all-pro in the NFL. So I know Polamalu is related to Troy Polamalu and probably works with him, in the offseason or has worked with him before, due to the relation. So, I don't know if there's something to be made about, I guess not the correlation with like inconsistent playing time in the rookie year, but uh, I don't think that it should define him, going forward. Obviously, the season's over, so he doesn't have an opportunity to get more playing time. But maybe next year he could have a big jump.
Yeah, and Isaiah Polamau, he's a restricted free agent, which means it's very likely that he'll be back, because they can just tender him, I think is the term, and it'll be a pretty cheap deal.
Mhm.
Uh, but he's the quintessential backup safety in my opinion. And in this game against the Broncos, he was playing a lot of like sub packages where he was like, you know, down in the box. He got a sack in this game. I mean, he was just all over the field, early on. Um, and as you may have seen in the comments on that last one, not to say that you should put it back, but uh, he was playing while Merrick and Epps were also on the field. So I don't know if it was just like it's the last game, let's get him some snaps or what, or if it was just a part of the game plan. But he went out there and he showed that he deserves to stay here. And I'm glad that they did that, regardless of what the intention was, because whether they get a new GM or whatever, you know, uh, it'd be nice for them to keep him. So,
Mhm.
and then as far as zero penalties, another game under Pierce with zero penalties. It's the second time with him, which is the first time in franchise history where the Raiders had 2 games with zero penalties in a single season. And this is also, I want to say, the first time in Raiders history that they had the least amount of penalties in a single season amongst all NFL teams. So I would say that's pretty impressive. Um, and again, I've commented on that before, but I like what I hear when I see that.
I want to bring back the 2016 Raiders where they had the most penalties in NFL history and still won a game.
Yeah, or well, went to the playoffs. But
I mean, they can miss the playoffs. Like, it doesn't really, harm me one way or another. But it was just kind of fun to watch where like they would just find ways to win, like different ways. It's like
well, it was
I don't
Derek
know. It
Carr's
was exciting.
comebacks. It was a lot of Derek Carr comebacks, and then Khalil Mack getting game-ending fumble recoveries,
Hmm.
or forced fumbles. But yeah, that 2016 was magical, and this season had some magic to it too. But it was a little too late.
Well,
So
let's talk about it. Let's recap the 2023 season.
yeah, I mean, let's see. Are there any tweets that I seen that might involve that? I don't know, but
A couple of them are like head coaching oriented, and I kind of want to save it for the next topic.
okay. Um, well, I guess I'll start with the Raiders ended with 8 wins. They ended up 8-9, if I'm not mistaken. I want to confirm that actually.
Was that far off
Um,
from my prediction?
that's what I was going to get into is all of our predictions. So the Raiders did end out 8-9, second in the division. I remember I remember preseason a lot of, experts saying, "Oh, the Raiders are going to win 4 to 5 games." 4 to 5 games. Okay. Yeah, that really annoyed me and I knew that wasn't going to happen. We both did. So as far as the record, as far as what we predicted, you predicted 8 to 11 wins. But you were very like bold on 8. But then you said
Hmm.
8 to 11. And then I said my prediction was 9-8. So I was 1 game off. I wanted a winning record. We didn't get that. But we were both very close.
Hmm.
Um, who would you say was the MVP? of the Raiders this season as a player?
Max Crosby.
Yeah, I would say it was also Crosby. Yeah, I would have to vote Crosby. Um, in the beginning, a week before the season started, we had our season predictions episode, and that's where I'm getting this info from. You chose Josh Jacobs as your MVP for the Raiders. I chose Max Crosby. Um, how about breakout? Who do you think was the Raiders' breakout for this season player?
Um, I'd have to say it's Jack Jones right now.
Jack Jones is, yeah, I would say Jack Jones is probably for the second half of the season or since he got picked up for sure. Because I would go as far to say he might. I wouldn't call him a shutdown corner, but he is he might be a top 10 to 15 corner right now. Like statistically, he's killing it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say that Malcolm Kuntz is the guy for me that was the breakout
Mm.
player this season. Actually, Malcolm Kuntz or Robert Spillane. Um,
I like Kuntz. I think
yeah,
I think definitely he's been a breakout player this season for the Raiders, no question.
yeah, especially again in the second half of the season. You chose uh, Hunter Renfro or Jacoby Myers or uh, why am I forgetting his first name? Tyree Wilson. I almost said Tyler. I was like, as your breakout candidates. And then I chose, as honorable mention, Marcus Epps, which actually isn't the worst choice. My
Mhm.
third choice for breakout was Malcolm Kuntz because at that time we had the issue with Chandler Jones. My second choice was Divine Diablo, and then my first choice was a tie between Tyree Wilson and Jacorian Bennett, which I don't know what happened to Jacorian Bennett, man. He started the season like, oh, he's going to become that corner. He's going to do it. And then benched, you know? So I don't know what happened with the coaching staff and whatnot, or if it was just a matter of, oh, we need to get the veterans out there because we need to go out there and win games. I don't know. But hopefully he gets his fair shots the next couple seasons. Um, and then as far as stats, I mean, Aiden O'Connell ended the season with 2,218 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Obviously, that's like a little more than half the season. Um, Josh Jacobs ended with 805 rushing yards, um, 6 touchdowns. Devontae
How many
Adams,
games did Jacobs end up playing?
13.
So, 800 yards to, for 13 games. I mean, he had 1,000-yard trajectory.
Yeah, he did. He did. He just, the thing with Jacobs and, uh, geez Louise, wow, really? Oh, receiving, let's see. Michael Mayer
Mhm.
is that they had season-ending injuries where we kept holding on to hope, like, oh, they're going to come back, and then they just never came back. Like they both missed like the last 4 weeks of the season. So Zamir White came in though and was pretty good for Jacobs. I mean, in basically 4 games, Zamir White had 451 yards and 1 touchdown, but over half as many yards as Jacobs in just 4, maybe 5 games. It's pretty
Mhm.
good. Um, and that should be a big topic as we get towards free agency is the whole Josh Jacobs or Zamir White thing because it's a big decision. After the head coach, that decision will come, and then eventually the quarterback decision. But Devontae Adams, 1,144 yards. Let's see, 8 touchdowns. I don't know why I thought he had 10, and 103 receptions. Jacoby Myers, 73 receptions, 807 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then on defense, Max Crosby ends the season with 14.5 sacks. Let's see. Where's the total? 90 tackles, which is third on the team. Robert Spillane had 148 tackles, as well as 3 interceptions. Divine Diablo was second with 106 tackles. Um, who else? Actually, I want to see Adam Butler's stats here.
What were
Where?
Nate Hobbs' stats? Because I know you were kind of high on Nate Hobbs going into the season. How did he, finish out his 2023 season?
Let's see, Nate Hobbs. Sorry, I'm trying to find him. It's ranking it by total tackles.
Hmm.
Oh, he's actually fourth on the team with tackles, 86. He had 1 sack, 6 tackles for loss, which Max Crosby had 23, and I'm curious if that led the league. 7 passes defended by Nate Hobbs, 1 interception, and a forced fumble. So I mean, pretty good year for Hobbs as a slot corner. He's like, to me, Hobbs is this guy who's kind of like, he'll have his great plays in coverage. He'll also have the plays where it's like, oh, I just wish he was stickier. You know,
Hmm.
I just wish he was a little closer. Uh, but as far as like defending the run and stuff, like he's a dog. You know. Let's see. Where's Adam Butler? Adam Butler, 28 tackles, 5 sacks for a D tackle. That's pretty good. Uh, 8 tackles for loss, four four passes defended. Wow, and a forced fumble.
I think the best metric to use to like kind of, I guess, judge cornerbacks is to see like the the passer rating that quarterbacks have against them. I feel like that's probably, you know, like how often they're targeted to, also plays into a part. How many,
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like corner is such a tough like position to judge just by watching it on TV and not being able to like see it on film because one thing I don't like about the NFL is that they're pretty dead set on giving us the side view instead of like having alternate ways to watch the game like from like a Madden perspective where you're looking from the back of the offense and you're looking towards the end zone so that way you can see all the players, the plays that they run and everything. Instead, it's just like, all right, we're gonna look at like half the defense and then like the entire, most of the offense because sometimes the receivers even go off the screen. It depends what stadium you're in. Uh, and then let's just kind of focus on the quarterback and nothing else. Like they should absolutely have alternate cameras at all times, and then you can flip to other
yeah.
channels.
No, that'd be sweet.
I think the NBA does that, and I think the MLB probably does that too.
Hmm.
Like I
That's
get
probably all I have.
I get upholding like the tradition too of watching football from that angle, but like there needs to be other options.
Right.
I might not be the only one saying it too, but I'm definitely uh I don't hear it enough. I don't hear enough people talking about that. But
Right.
in terms of the Raiders, just to kind of like summarize what it seemed like from the outside, it was a season for the Raiders that seemed like, you know, it was just going to be another wasted season right after they fired McDaniels. You know, uh, when was that? Like week 5, week 6? How long did McDaniels last?
I think it was week 8, the
Might
Lions
I mean,
game.
yeah, but I know Raider fans were begging for him to be fired way before that. So,
Mm.
in a way, Raider fans got what they wanted then. Obviously, every Raider fan wanted to go to the playoffs this season. And really, this would have been the year to do it too. I don't think Kansas City is really that strong, compared to how they've been in the past. And even the Raiders, kind of, um, spoiled the Christmas for Kansas City this year. You did say in the predictions that the Raiders would split with Kansas City. They would at least beat them once. So you were right on that. You were right that they would split with the Chargers. You were you were dead on that they were going to beat the Broncos. I don't even think that you said that they were going to split with the Broncos. What happened is that they had a coaching change mid-year And then so, you know, everybody gravitated towards Antonio Pierce. And he was this new energy, and he was everything that Josh McDaniels wasn't. And McDaniels was just like, sorry ass system coach that, like, really he didn't even look like, you know, he wasn't getting creative on the play calls or anything. And really, like, the play calling didn't get better when Antonio Pierce stepped in, but it was really the leadership that I think Jermaine Illuminor, kind of touched on, that he's, you can't teach leadership. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Raiders do, going forward. Do we want to talk about the next, or jump into the next topic, kind of, talking about, where do the Raiders go from here?
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I'll say on the recap, actually, this is more towards the Broncos game, but the Raiders are on a 8-game win streak against the Broncos. Just had to.
They haven't lost to the Broncos since they were in Oakland.
Yeah,
right?
they as long as the Raiders have been in Las Vegas, they are undefeated against the Broncos. The Denver Broncos have not beaten the Las Vegas Raiders ever.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it dates back to Oakland for sure. So.
Oh, and before we get to where do the Raiders go from here, I just want to say it was another season 2, which is so disheartening for fans like you. I can see it from a mile away. It's like, all right, you even said you hope this doesn't happen, but get so close to where you just missed the playoffs, and then you get so far away to where you can't draft, in the top 10 or top 5, right? Like, the Raiders were so close. Would they have made the playoffs if they had just beat the Colts? Based on like the scenarios based on the scenarios you gave?
The the Steelers would have ruined it because
Okay.
they needed to win at least or lose at least one game, and they won out. They beat both the Seahawks and the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless, like the Raiders, at the end of the day, the Raiders gave a great effort, and I can't be all that mad about the Colts game. You could call back a couple of penalties, and suddenly the Raiders might take that game to overtime. But at the end of the day, it's just I can't fault Antonio Pierce for not making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
All I was asking for was a winning season as far as his 9 games, and he gave that to me. Like, to that, I say, I'm happy with you being my head coach. Absolutely happy. I understand Mark Davis wanting to go and, go with the full interview process. I can't be mad at it. I don't even think Antonio Pierce can either. We'll get to that. It's just
let's talk about it now.
All right, yeah.
Talk about it now. Where do the Raiders go from here? Because you mentioned that Antonio Pierce finished with that winning record in his 9 games. What was his record, Mike?
Antonio Pierce, he was 5-4.
He was 5-4. Okay. All right, so he was just above 500. And a lot of those games, I feel like, weren't against maybe the toughest opponents that the Raiders could have been playing. So you kind of take that with a grain of salt. You have to think about, when you're hiring a head coach, I'm not saying Antonio Pierce didn't earn the opportunity to be the head coach of the Raiders going forward. If I'm Mark Davis, I heavily consider giving him a prove it deal, where maybe it's like 1 to 2 years, and Antonio Pierce will have a full off season to prepare this team, and, have 1 to 2 years to get his offense rolling, because right now he and Patrick Graham have the defense prepared. The defense is playing great. And I know that you are worried that bringing in another head coach like a Jim Harbaugh might potentially seal the fate of Patrick Graham going somewhere else. But right now, since Mark Davis is going through and interviewing people, Antonio Pierce and the Raiders staff have sort of given permission to assistant coaches to go look for opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah.
If Patrick Graham gets hired somewhere else before a decision has been made about Antonio Pierce, Jim Harbaugh, or whoever, How are you feeling about retaining Antonio Pierce at that point?
Yeah, that would be that's a good question, that's for sure. I don't know. I guess there's this scary thought process for me of okay, the Raiders, like you said, Mark Davis or whoever said, hey, when Monday comes around, Black Monday, whatever they call it, when that comes around, you guys have permission to go and look for jobs elsewhere if they come to you. And I would have to imagine the two names that will get the most like interest will be Patrick Graham and Champ Kelly, the interim general manager. I haven't heard anything about either yet. At least I don't think. Uh, and it's only Monday, but yeah, if if Patrick Graham goes and becomes the defensive coordinator at some other team, I'm just gonna be like, dude, are you kidding me? And I mean, okay, he had his press conference like 2 weeks ago now, basically saying like a lot of people were thinking that he was kind of saying goodbye or like maybe prepping for it, where he was like, I don't want to get emotional here, but this was my favorite, essentially his favorite season as a coach. Like period. Like he had the most fun with his team and blah 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 blah. Like what it sounded like to me was he wants to stay, but also he's aware of the situation and he knows like anything can happen. You know, I don't know. I would like to think that I'll just answer your question. It would upset me. Um, I'm having a hard time with this, but I have mentioned that like essentially my loyalties line with Patrick Graham, not necessarily Antonio Pierce. Can I would I be fine with keeping Antonio Pierce without Patrick Graham? Yeah, sure, but I think okay, if Patrick Graham leaves before we even find the right coach or just the interview process is over, if Patrick Graham leaves, I'm leaning Harbaugh because that would force me into well, now no matter what, we're probably going to have some changes coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if Patrick Graham left before a coach is even hired, that would make me favor Harbaugh. But until that happens, am I favoring Antonio Pierce? Maybe. Like I'm really 50-50 right now. Like I see the positives to both. Like with Antonio Pierce, it's like, oh, let's run it back. Let's give him a good offseason to go and do it his way, you know. Um, but if it's not him, if it's Harbaugh, then I'd like to hope that we keep Patrick Graham. But even if not, maybe he brings in a defensive coordinator that can keep the same system. I don't know. So
Mm-hmm. I feel like the Raiders are kind of like they're not skating on thin ice, but definitely in like, slippery slope territory because I feel like they're in a position to where, the players have had a lot of say in the past couple weeks and they really look up to Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce has been, you know, the guy in Las Vegas over the past 9 weeks.
yeah,
Um, a lot of players, and I don't see this very often for teams. A lot of players have been outright vouching for Antonio Pearson. Not just that, they're questioning the decision of even considering getting someone else. Right now, you know, people have sort of talked about Mark Davis cannot make the same mistake again, right? But at a certain point, does it become, is Mark Davis going to learn from his mistakes, or is this just going to be the tendency with him? Because I feel like this will be the third time in recent memory that I can remember that Mark Davis has moved on from somebody who's doing good and gotten the guy that he just wants,
mm.
you know. So let me tell you the other two, and then this would be the third. So Jack Del Rio, I thought, was doing a good job as the Raiders head coach. I thought he was, I thought he was doing a fine job. And I think they missed the playoffs in his final season. And then Mark Davis decided, you know, he just wanted John Gruden. Like
Mhm.
he didn't think about giving Jack Del Rio another year, and he didn't even want to interview anyone else. I think the Raiders like have to do something in order to like circumvent the Rooney Rule.
Yeah, he was dead set on Gruden, so I think they just interviewed their tight ends coach and their, backup wide receiver coach, whatever you want to call it, assistant.
Mhm. And then after that, they went, you know, Gruden had his whole, NFL scandal, Gruden got canceled and then they had to part ways, right? I don't think there's bad blood between the Raiders and Gruden, or at least, the Raiders don't feel that way towards Gruden. Maybe Gruden feels that way the other way around, but I don't think so. Um, and then Rich Bisaccia or Bizacchia, however it's supposed to be pronounced. I apologize. Um, he, he leads the Raiders to the playoffs in, you know, probably the worst conditions that you could imagine. Like, what didn't happen to the Raiders that season? Like Henry Ruggs got into that, really unfortunate car accident that, cost people lives. And then that was like their first round pick who was actually looking, like a promising receiver that season. And then the John Gruden thing happened. And then, all of a sudden this team makes the playoffs and is within one possession of beating, the Bengals, who eventually went to the Super Bowl on the road.
Yep.
I think I remember you telling me, you're like, that's all I wanted. You just wanted to see a playoff game, have it go down to the wire. Even if the Raiders didn't pull it out, you just wanted to see, your team in the playoffs. You did.
Yeah.
And then Mark Davis decided that he was just going to go with Josh McDaniels because that's who he wanted. That was probably at the time maybe the top coaching candidate.
Well, I think the way that McDaniels went, from what I understand, it wasn't that he was the guy that Mark Davis wanted. I think at the time, and this is actually a good topic to have after we're done talking about this, but I think at the time Mark Davis was kind of addicted to the thought of I need to redo the Patriot way, just like at least five other teams have tried with different Patriots coaches, becoming their head coaches. But the difference is we saw Josh McDaniels in Denver, but he was young. He went back to New England and continued his success with them. So it was like, we haven't seen Josh McDaniels really get his chance to do this. And then when basically Mark Davis found out, like, oh, Josh McDaniels is available, like, you could hire him. He was like, whoa, I could go get the guy who's been calling plays for one of the most prolific offenses the past 20 years, won 6 Super Bowls or however many it's been. Hell yeah. Like, yeah, in theory and whatnot, it makes sense. It just felt, I think, to him like, oh, that's too good to pass up, you know? And it's very well possible that Harbaugh could be that next guy. Um, I just hope he thinks, because to your point, yes, it's like, man, you kind of had it with Bazakia, although I feel like I was a little less confident with Bazakia and Greg. I'm forgetting the offensive coordinator's name. Damn it, the guy who like with Derek Carr and everything. Oh man, his name was Greg. Whatever. I think he's with the Rams now or something, or the Seahawks actually. I think, but
Mhm.
he was the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, and then shit, I don't even remember who our defensive coordinator was at the time. Uh, before Patrick Graham, but I didn't have the same trust that they could run a system through an off season. The only
Mhm.
person I actually trusted a little bit was Mike Mayock because I felt like he's smart, but the problem with him was he had zero previous experience.
Experience.
He was like he's a good scout, I guess, but he's not like a proven general manager. He was very good at, like speaking to the media, but that doesn't mean that he was a good GM. Whereas
Mhm.
now it's like, okay, we have Champ Kelly who has been molded to be a good GM. We have Pierce, who has done nothing but prove that he's a solid coaching candidate. A great defensive coordinator with a great defense. I would say on paper, I think they're a top 10 defense, at least the second half of the season, statistically. At least top 10 scoring defense, Their run defense needs help, but their pass defense is top 10. And then they just need to figure out the offensive coordinator, It's like I can trust that more than I could even trust Bazakia and that group, right? Because it seemed like Bazakia was going to be very loyal to like Carr and stuff, whereas this, it's like, oh, let's go find our quarterback of the future. Like it feels better, but I don't know. I think Harbaugh could be that guy that's just like, oh, Mark Davis sitting there like I can't pass that up.
Mhm.
And then there's the theory or thought process that, whoa, what if Tom Brady's in his ear, Like, what if Tom Brady is now one of the guys that are, helping him in the hiring process,
Mhm. I have to say, this might be, aside from relocating the team to Las Vegas, because I'm sure that was a tough decision for Mark Davis to do. Um, this might be the toughest decision that Mark Davis has had to make for the Raiders ever. Because right now he is pinned between, in one hand, he's got a head coach that not just the players want, and the players really want Antonio Pierce to be back. He's got all the fans want him. I'm going to share that tweet that you sent me with the fans chanting Antonio Pierce,
Yeah.
running off.
And they're better.
I
And
heard
there
that
might
Antonio Pierce got out of his car on the way to the stadium and was like hugging fans. I don't
Yeah.
know if that was true, but like
Yeah.
the fans really like Antonio Pierce. So
Yeah.
on this one hand, you've got somebody that like everyone loves. And then on the other hand, you've got what may be the best head coaching candidate in the past God knows how long. The last time Harbaugh coached in the NFL, he took a team that was poorly coached by Mike Singletary and turned them in one season into an NFC championship, level team that should have went to the Super Bowl if it was not for Kyle Williams like fumbling 3 times and muffing a punt.
Right.
And then they lost to the Ravens, who had Hall of Famers on that defense too. And then they lost to Seattle. Like, say what you want, but the Raiders, I know, would kill to be in that position. Like,
That's the
nobody
position.
wants to be in second place, and
Yeah.
nobody
No.
wants to be dog shit for 20 years like the Raiders have been. No offense.
Right. And like, all I want is I want playoff wins first because like the past say 10 years, all I've been trying to see this team build itself up towards, depending on what level it's at. So if it's a rebuild, it's like, okay, let's get a couple wins, maybe try to get like a top pick. Then they do that. Okay, let's try to get around 500. Let's win some fucking games. Okay, they do that. Okay, cool. Now let's go win games, getting a winning season and make the playoffs. They fail, they fire their coach, they restart, right? Or they finally make the playoffs and either their quarterback breaks his leg or it's on an interim coach and then they start over, start the process all. It's like this offseason is the perfect point where it's like they're winning games. They have a fucking defense for the first time in my life. All they need is the quarterback and the right coach. Antonio Pierce very well could be that guy. But if you can get Harbaugh, I totally understand. I totally do. Here's my problem. And I sent you a tweet. It's a video of Nate Hobbs, if you could play it. And you could probably guess what my fear is, but I think players would buy into Harbaugh, absolutely, But go ahead and play the video.
Okay.
You feel like you guys have built something here, especially on defense, and some momentum at the end of the season to carry into next year?
No, yeah. I think this team we got right here is special. It's filled with special people. Energy is contagious. And most of all, they got heart. They got fight in their heart. You know what I'm saying? We never give up. You can't watch a game this year and say we were supposed to lose that game, but we gave up. And every game, after AP took over, every game is big. They played a hell of a game.
Right. What do you think the key is to make sure that this kind of game is going to be more consistent?
You're one of them. You see what?
What do you feel you guys have to do next year to make sure these types of games are the more consistent games in terms of the outcome?
I think really all we got to do is bring AP back. That's all I'm saying. Simple as that. Simple as that. Plain and simple.
You feel good about going into next year? I know this is going to be a year where off season where you think about things.
If we don't come back, man, we boycott it. Sit out like the 2012 NBA lockout.
I mean, obviously he means a lot to you guys. You know, and were you playing for him today?
Yeah, for sure. We all was. He means something to us. You heard
Why is that?
He allow us to be us. That's special. You know, you don't get that at this level. You're
Right.
allowed to be yourself and play how you want to play. Bring yourself to work every day and make you love your job, man. For real.
Real quick, I do want to give a shout out to, I guess Vincent
Bonsignor.
Monsignor, who provided this video. This is a really good interview. So
I feel like you guys have built.
If you want to follow him on Twitter, this is pretty good. Yeah, man, this is going to be the toughest decision that Mark Davis is going to make, and yeah,
Here's my thing.
I know the boycotting thing isn't going to happen, but like, there's going to be like a mental, like, do you remember when I told you like the stepdad sort of complex?
I don't know.
Last episode where I'm like, I know Antonio Pierce isn't like a father figure to these guys, but like the dynamic is kind of similar where it's like, you're taking this guy away, everybody, like that's our coach. That's our head coach. And then you bring in somebody else. It doesn't matter who it is. You might not fully buy in because it's like, we should, what the hell are we doing here? We should have had Antonio Pierce this whole time. So this might be a lose-lose situation for the Raiders.
Well, my whole thing with this video is, you have Nate Hobbs, who came in, I think he was drafted from Mayock and Gruden, and now he's been through McDaniels, and now he's gone through 9 games of Antonio Pierce, and he's like, all we need to do to keep success is bring back AP. That's what he's saying. And maybe that's just him telling the media because he wants his message out there. But really, he might think like, okay, really, we just need a quarterback. And he's not going to say that, right? But obviously the guys on defense are loyal to him. Davante Adams has said the locker room is loyal to him. Davante Adams is loyal to AP. You know who's really loyal to him? Is the other guy in that video. Jack Jones. High school, college, and now coached under AP on the Raiders. I'm not saying Jack Jones would ruin things if AP doesn't get the job and it's like Harbaugh, but like I could see it now because, and I'm not trying to say the wrong thing here about Jack Jones because I really think he's like a top corner. He could be our starting corner. He could be our guy. But there's this like little red flag I get where he's like, oh, we'll boycott, blah, 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 because that's his guy, And it feels like things just lucked out and he ended up on the Raiders with Antonio Pierce. But at the same time, it's like, what was the context of him getting out of New England? Why would New England just randomly cut him? Because he clearly had he was the same prospect with New England than he is here, So why would they just up and give up? Other than maybe him forcing himself off the team? So if they don't keep AP, does he do the same thing with the Raiders? And if he starts doing that in the locker room, does that create a rippling effect? Where other guys are like, yeah, fuck this, or whatever I don't expect that. But I mean, when AP took over, you said it. You were like, "Oh man, this talk about now he's letting the players take over the locker room, take over the team." It If there is going to be a backlash, it's that AP set off a ticking timer of, hey, if you don't keep me, these guys are gonna fucking revolt.
Yeah.
Could that happen?
I think it very well could happen. It's happened before. I'm sure it's happened before.
And then what happens? Then what happens? The Raiders lose that top 10 defense that I'm all excited about.
I'll tell
Again,
you exactly.
Go ahead.
It's a ripple effect. All right. If Mark Davis hires Jim Harbaugh, I'm almost confident that if they don't win immediately, they're gonna have to blow this team up.
Well,
I don't know how Harbaugh is with constructing brand new teams. I know he does good in stepping into situations, but like right now, this might be the toughest situation to step into if you're a new head coach. No quarterback, talented team that likes the guy before me.
Yeah. And I don't want to be all negative towards like Jack Jones. I just sent you another video. Like he said some really good things about this offseason and stuff. Like I'm not trying to accuse him of like potentially not being a team player. Like he seems like he's a team player. All right. Like I'm not trying to get all negative. It's just this time, like I didn't have as strong feelings towards Bazakia as I do now towards AP and specifically Patrick Graham and specifically this defense. It's like, okay, AP, you're the head coach. What are you going to do? I'm going to fix the offense. Awesome. Like it really is just give me the quarterback, figure out the running back, figure out the offensive line. We're good. Jim Harbaugh, welcome to the Raiders. You're the head coach. Your defense is now deteriorating. You have to find new coaching staffs on offense and defense. You have to fix both the offense and probably the defense too. It's twice the job for Jim Harbaugh, And oh, by the way, they bring in a new GM. So now the GM has to reevaluate the team. And we have people in leadership roles who don't fully know the team yet. Whereas you keep AP, you keep Champ Kelly, let's just attack the offseason because we're fucking ready. We're going there. We're already there, I don't know if that makes sense, but I remember when Ziegler came in, it was like, oh, well, we didn't get a full offseason like you usually would. Usually you would start in January, but we kind of didn't get to start until March or what. It's like, well, that fucking sucks. I don't really want that, but I understand. Again, I understand it with Harbaugh. There's a lot of potential there, and maybe that's worth it. And if it happens, it happens. All I care about is what's best for the team. But my God, I really think that this defense is worth keeping, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say too, Jack Jones said something in that video that was very interesting to me. He said that, that Antonio Pierce made the players, enjoy their job, like to actually, enjoy it from the past, and this is just like what I've witnessed on social media after the fallout of Harbaugh, former players after Jim Tomsula got hired, I forget which player it was. But they were like, it's finally nice to have a coach that isn't like, trying to make practice living hell.
They were saying living hell towards Harbaugh?
Yeah, like Harbaugh would make practices so hard. And then you would have other players also, from the same team. I want to say it was either Alex Boone, Joe Staley, or, one of the linemen. And it's like, we practiced hard and that's why we were so good.
About Harbaugh?
Yeah, like defending Harbaugh, being such a tough head coach. Like,
right.
I know for a fact if Harbaugh comes in, it's going to be a massive shift. Like Harbaugh is going to want to practice hard so that way the games are easy. Like, every coach has their kind of own vibe, their own vibe that they bring to the building. But I know Harbaugh is like super intense.
Yeah. So, I think we're just about done here. I do have one last thing, which is kind of yo,
Joel, thank
welcome
you
on
for
back.
checking it out. You have one last thing. Do we want to answer this question from Joel right now, or to end it off? I know
Yeah, I'll answer it. Right.
reasoning was like at the beginning of the topic. So
Right. I mean, we kind of were just talking about this, but I mean, okay, like this is a great question as far as who would you pick right now? Like Josh, who would you pick?
I would pick Jim Harbaugh. You can't let him slip away. He will figure it out, even if it's not with this roster.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my true answer is I want what's best for the Raiders. I'm not a future teller. I can't tell the future. Neither can Mark Davis. But if Harbaugh is the best for the future of the Raiders, then yes, I would pick Harbaugh. Right now, where my fears take me and stuff, I might lean AP. But is that the right move to make a move based off of, oh man, I don't want to lose this, when really it's like, yeah, but you could have a guy who could bring you a championship. It's like maybe Harbaugh's the right guy. And again, as far as, bringing in a quarterback and, building up that quarterback, Harbaugh's probably the right guy for that. So I guess my gut tells me Harbaugh, but my heart tells me AP, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good way to put it. What were you going to say to finish out this topic?
Yeah, the last thing here, and this is kind of proof to me that the Raiders are going to truly go through and do their due diligence as far as this off-season hiring process, because these were interim roles with the head coach, GM, and offensive coordinator. Those interim tags are nothing's been said, but I'm assuming they're now gone. I don't know though. This is from Vic Tafer on Twitter. Mark Davis has requested permission to speak with Colts assistant GM Ed Dodds and 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters for the Raiders general manager position. This lines up with him, Mark Davis, hiring a GM before a coach. Champ Kelly has a very good chance of being promoted from the interim role. That's from Vic Tafer. So first off, what do you think about Adam Peters?
I really don't know what to think about Adam Peters. He's been with the 49ers ever since Shanahan and Lynch have been here, or at least maybe he signed on, somewhere along the line, since 2017. But he's been with the team for now, many years. The 49ers don't really disclose what it is that Adam Peters does and what it is John Lynch does or doesn't do. So it's hard from the outside to really, George Kittle's great. That's Adam Peters, or George Kittle's great. That's John Lynch. It just seems like the 49ers have historically under Shanahan and Lynch drafted very well outside of the first 3 rounds, and they have been pretty inconsistent, to say it nicely, in the first 3 rounds, ever since they've been here. Like their best 2 picks or their best several picks, inside the first 3 rounds ever since they've been here have been Nick Bosa, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel. I'm trying to think of other first, second, or third round picks that have been great. Oh, Fred Warner. Fred Warner has been, I think he was a 3rd round pick out of BYU. Other than that, they have been pretty spotty in that especially the first round, because the past 3 years, our draft pick has been Trey Lance, who only gave us 4 games. But not Lance's fault. Just kind of like the way it unfolded was, unfortunate. Adam Peters, I've heard nothing but nice things about him. I don't know if I should feel sad or indifferent on whether or not he leaves for potentially the Raiders, potentially Washington Commanders. I know that they're interviewing, or they requested to interview him too. I'm just kind of annoyed at the timing of this, because I don't think that teams should be allowed to interview people during playoff runs. Like I know the Ravens are also having that happen to them too, where maybe their defensive coordinator is also getting interviewed, but you don't think it has like an impact? Like, your mind is not in the same place. Like,
Right. I
you
think
should be focused on what's ahead instead of like your future.
100%. I think there's a well, for one thing, they're requesting permission, I think. So the team can deny it for one thing. There also may be a different rule set for coaches and GMs, and whether or not they can interview them in person or virtually. I want to say there's rules to that as far as the timeline of the playoffs and such. And I swear I might have saw it somewhere, but I lost it. So,
Joel says Ed Dodds GM equals Harbaugh. No disrespect to Ed Dodds, but I don't even know who that is.
Well, it's funny because actually here, first off, for Adam Peters, I'm going to read the first two paragraphs of his biography on the Niners website. If I can stop coughing. Adam Peters is in his 21st season in the NFL and third as the Niners assistant general manager. Previously, Peters spent 4 seasons as vice president of player personnel for the Niners. Very good. He joined San Francisco after spending 8 seasons, 2009 to 2016, with the Denver Broncos. In 2016, Peters was named the Broncos director of college scouting after spending 2 seasons as the team's assistant director of college scouting. Peters spent 3 years as a national scout after originally joining the Broncos as a regional scout in 2009. So, a lot of scouting passed in his time.
In his career.
In his career, there you go. Thank you. But recently, a very high-ranking person for the Niners. So this is a pretty good. I mean, I think that was the first name that came out as far as who the Raiders reached out to. So,
yeah, it's funny that like he's attributed to scouting and like really paying attention to to college players. The 49ers did not draft well this year. Right now, I mean, we're going to talk about one of their highest draft picks in the Niners Rams recap, but besides that player, and the player I'm referring to is Jake Moody. Besides Jake Moody, which of their rookies are making an impact? Well, Jair Brown, but Jair Brown is playing a lot because Hufanga is hurt.
Right. Yeah. I mean, regardless, obviously this is a really good Niners team, so he's had a lot of time to see this team go from the first year of Shanahan to now, and hopefully he has a good grasp on how to build up a team, right? This is breaking news actually that just came out. The Chargers are requesting to interview 49ers defensive coordinator Steve Wilks for their head coaching vacancy.
Tyler's not going to like that.
Yeah, he just texted, I'm going to kill myself. But Ed
Did
Dodds,
he really?
I swear he just said that. Ed Dodds, the Colts, let me see, sorry. Shit. What was he, the assistant GM? Ed Dodds? For the Colts. Yes, the assistant GM for the Colts. I'm not finding a biography for him, but I do remember one thing. He at least got a request to be interviewed when the Raiders ended up getting Ziegler. I don't know if they interviewed him or if he denied it. It's also possible that they interviewed him a first time and they requested a second time and he may have denied that one. I remember him being my favorite candidate in that GM search. That ended up becoming, that hiring cycle, yeah. And Champ Kelly was another one. No, that became Ziegler. That was 2 years ago. And he was still with the Colts at the time, so I thought he was going to end up with another team, and he's still with the Colts. So Ed Dodds is interesting. Yeah.
Good.
So so far so good as far as who they are requesting to interview. We'll see who else they interview, and then as Vic Tafer mentioned, Chip Kelly is very much still in that process as well. So add him to that list. But yeah, we'll see how it goes, and then I guess this is my thing. It's only Monday. Jim Harbaugh has a big game tonight, the national championship, right? And the outcome of that game will be very interesting. I would have to imagine that he will start getting the calls tomorrow. The requests and the calls will come tomorrow. There's no reason for a team to do that today.
It's either going to be, hey, Jim, congratulations on the big win. You looking for an even bigger one?
Right.
Or, hey, Jim, sorry about the game. Let's talk business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, Vic Tafer mentioned something that's interesting to me, which is Mark Davis likes to look for his GMs first. I can't help but think that this time might be different because, again, Harbaugh seems like the type of guy that would want his say on all of that. And you even mentioned he had a hard time with Balky, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
he didn't want Trent Baalke.
Yeah. Now, if Dodds is the type of guy that he likes or he knows or something, then that could explain that, But I would have to imagine that if the Raiders were to get Harbaugh, he would be hired first, and then right after that would be the GM, or they announce both at the same time. But it'll be interesting. This next week will be interesting. I've seen a lot of people say that they think the Harbaugh hire might go quickly, whether it's the Raiders or the Chargers, or apparently maybe the Commanders are interested, which there's no way he goes there. So we'll see. Hopefully the next time we have a podcast, we might be reacting to something like that. But regardless, at the end of the day, I just want what's right for the Raiders, what's best for the Raiders, and what gets us closer to winning another Super Bowl championship.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to the Niners section of the show. And I just want to say that if the next couple topics feel like they're going kind of quick, it's because kind of pressed for time today. And then also, the Raiders season just ended, yesterday. So there's a lot of questions kind of surrounding the Raiders and their head coaching, or potentially head coaching hiring process if they don't decide to stick with Antonio Pierce. Also, the next couple episodes are going to be a lot more 49ers centric because they're in the playoffs and, could potentially go on a Super Bowl run. I know we will at least have 2 more episodes talking about, the Niner playoffs, or at least 3 more, because, next week we're going to probably preview their matchup based on what happens in the wild card weekend. And then we're going to, also react to the wild card games. Right. And then after that, we'll recap what happens in the divisional round, and hopefully the 49ers move on. So maybe at least 2 or 3 more episodes kind of, discussing the Niners. But I'm going to get into what happened yesterday with the 49ers and the Rams. The Niners just heard that I predicted they would get 13 wins this year, and then they decided, you know what? We're not going to let it happen. They're like, you know what? Josh is going to be 1 win short, or at least he's going to overcompensate by 1 win. And really, this game didn't really have any impact. Besides the fact that Jake Moody missed a 38-yard field goal. I want to say it was 38. And then he missed PAT, which is pretty alarming because in every team, like I guess the cliche is always you're only as good as your weakest link. And I could 100% see the next 49er playoff blunder. There's always an iconic moment in every single 49er playoff loss, at least since I've been watching, or like the past 10, 12, 14 years. There's always that one moment that you can point to. Kyle Williams, the overthrow and what I thought was a missed defensive holding call on Michael Crabtree on the fade route on 4th down. There was that. There was, the interception that Kaepernick forced to Michael Crabtree, and then Richard Sherman ended up intercepting it, or he might have tipped it. I forget. I try to block that out from my mind because it makes me depressed. There's the Jaquiski Tart dropped interception. There's the Jimmy Garoppolo overthrow. What if the 49ers are in the Super Bowl or in the NFC Championship game? The game comes down to the final, play. They're down by 1 or down by 2, and they get to kick the go-ahead field goal. There's only time to either run one more play, but they're, kind of far away, and it all comes down to Jake Moody. If you're a 49er fan watching this, don't you have a knot in your stomach right now thinking about that? Because I would not be confident. And Jake Moody's been fine all year. He started off very poorly against the Raiders when the Raiders iced him twice in a preseason game. Yeah, fuck Josh McDaniels for that. Kind of like got in his head. And then Jake Moody struggled during the preseason, and then throughout the whole season, he's been money. Like, he's been money except for that Cleveland, the game against Cleveland. He cost the 49ers that game, but the Niners had many opportunities to win that game. But man, Moody has to just tough it out for the next couple weeks, turn off social media, or I guess tune in however he normally prepares. Don't make it bigger than what it needs to be. You just have to kick the ball, and it's got to go through those 2 uprights. Nothing else matters. So Jake Moody, you absolutely, I always use the word absolutely. I need to find, I need to, read a thesaurus and get new words to use. But you definitely need to take some pressure off of yourself and just remember, it's one kick at a time. Don't think about the circumstances. Just think about you, the ball, and the uprights. Block everything else out. I've never played kicker, but I'm pretty sure just be focused. Please don't cost the Niners. Because if somebody had to cost the Niners, I'm pretty sure it would be Moody or Kyle Shanahan doing something stupid again, like he's done in how many playoff runs.
Well, I think the Niners really just need to ensure that they can't allow Moody to,
they can't put it in his hands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what the Niners need to focus on. Yeah.
And then so, other things that happened in this Rams game was Puka Nacua broke 2, rookie receiving yard records, for the Rams. And I'm happy for Puka Nacua. He absolutely deserved it. He made a huge contribution to my fantasy team. So that kind of sweetens it for me that he gets like a happy ending to his season, or his regular season. We'll see how the playoffs unfold. But, other than that, things that stood out was, Sam Darnold started off well, and, typically the Niners will start off well with the scripted plays that Shanahan has. And then, what I noticed with Sam Darnold is they struggle to move the ball at a certain point, and, they just stop scoring for whatever reason. The offense kind of flatlines, and then final drive to potentially win the game. The Niners were down 1 point, and they were going to try to get it in field goal range or potentially score a touchdown. And, I would have loved for them to get it into field goal range and let Jake Moody end the day off with like a good note. But if he was going to miss that kick too, I would rather the way that it ended just happen, where, all right, it's already a bad day for Jake Moody. Just forget about it. Move on. You don't want him thinking about another miss. You know what I mean? You don't want to completely shatter his confidence if it wasn't already shattered, with the missed kicks. But one thing that was interesting was that Brett Maher, the Rams kicker, also missed at least a field goal yesterday. So it wasn't just Moody. So, I'm over here getting moody about it, but really, I think the Niners made the right decision in, not playing Brock Purdy against the Rams. I wish that maybe more of the starters would have gotten the day off, but they were out of the game quickly. It was really like it was a dress rehearsal for the team, and Sam Darnold, I don't have a lot of faith in him. So if the Niners can keep Purdy healthy during the playoffs, I think they'll be in good shape. But let's see. Joel says the Brett Maher special. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Brett Maher was the Cowboys kicker last year who missed how many kicks in a row and, ended up getting fired or, cut from the team. Yeah, he missed at least 4 in a row, but yeah. And then he ended up missing yesterday too. So it was a Brett Maher special. I don't really have much else to say about the Rams game, but let's kind of go quickly.
Can we actually
pull up the?
Yeah, can we go over our overall season for both teams?
Yeah. I forgot to do that during the Raider topic, so we'll go through both. In just
really quickly.
Yeah. I'm fixing it right now. To have the most accurate information.
For sure.
Okay. That looks good to me. And then this here, I'll share right now. Okay. So I predicted the Niners and they let me down. But I'd rather them I'd rather them let me down now instead of in the next couple weeks. So you were right with the Rams. So you are going to get. All right. Do you want to look at the Raider one first, or you want to look at the Niner one?
We'll do Raiders first.
Yeah, we'll do the Raider one first. The Raiders were so hard to judge this year. There was a lot of missed predictions because, man, it's like they would be playing well and then all of a sudden they just couldn't get it going on offense. But we both finished 11 for 17 for the Raiders.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, the Week 4 Charger game is probably the one where I'm like, why did I pick the Raiders?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, my gut was telling me the Vikings were going to win the Vikings game, but I don't even fault myself for that one because, again, if Hunter Renfrow just doesn't fumble that game, we probably win. But
maybe.
No, yeah, 11 out of 17, not bad.
There we go. Is that a little bit better?
Oh, to see everything, yeah.
Yeah. Here, there we go. Or is it too small?
No, that's good. At least to me,
All right. So at the end of the 49er season, I picked the Niners in every game. There were a couple conditions.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple conditions, but it got to a certain point where it's like I can't bet against the Niners. And then during that 3-game losing streak, I was expecting the Niners to turn it around at whatever certain point. They arguably, besides that missed kick, they had opportunities to win that Browns game. The Vikings game, there was no excuse for that. They lost it in the end. The Bengals, the Niners genuinely got their asses handed to them by the Bengals. Like, the Niners genuinely were not the better team that day. And then they went on the bye week, got Chase Young, went on a winning streak. And then the Ravens game happened, and we learned a lot, that the Niners aren't far and beyond every team. They are beatable, right? Even though we should have learned that here, especially with the Bengals game. But I figured the Bengals are not, they're not the same without Burrow, so you don't have to worry about them down the line. Yeah, and then they let me down against the Rams. Really, that was the difference. We would have tied
Yeah.
if
The Rams game was the difference.
Rams game was the difference. We would have tied. So we finished off the season. I had 23 correct predictions and 11 incorrect ones. You had 25 correct predictions with 9 incorrect ones. But
we'll keep track of our, because we're going to start doing playoff predictions.
Yeah.
They won't be as like, we don't have to make a box for it, but we can just kind of tally it or whatever, and then come back after like the Super Bowl or something. But
I might make a box for like Niner ones. Well, but we'll see how I want to do it.
True.
So that Chiefs game, that last, you were pretty. I gave it to you because you were pretty adamant the Raiders were going to win, but I think you were expecting Jacobs to play. So
yeah.
that last minute switch, if you had been like, sort of thinking it was a coin toss, and then you wanted to switch, I would have said nah.
Yeah.
There's no way. But I re-listened to that video in particular, and you were like, yeah, the Raiders are going to win this game. So, man, what a hell of a season. We got more right than we did wrong, but the Niners really helped me a lot because I just picked them every game.
Yeah, you did. Man. Yeah.
So they're a good team to bet on.
Yeah. No, I know. They are probably a lot of bettors' favorites this year.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as far as the 2023 recap, I mean, what do you have? Or we could go through our predictions and everything if you want.
I predicted 13 wins. Really, we can kind of keep it light for the regular season recap, because the Niners, we're probably going to do another recap of, after the playoff run, just kind of, recapping everything as a whole. But the Niners started off very hot. They were the hottest team in football until they hit that 3-game skid. They added Chase Young. Chase Young was a good contribution. Yeah, I'm just repeating like what I said, like, on the like just a couple minutes ago. But
right,
the Niners pretty much dominated down the stretch, but there was that game against the Ravens that makes things very interesting going forward as a potential Super Bowl, like if they meet up in the Super Bowl, like if that Christmas Day game was a preview, the Niners are definitely going to attack them differently, I'd have to imagine.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, another notable thing about the Niners is that I had questions about Purdy, and Purdy is, still maybe in the conversation for MVP, just based off of his stats alone. He's a Pro Bowl quarterback. The offense was awesome. The offense was awesome this year, dude. They were like putting up at least 30 points every week. It felt like there weren't a lot of games where they didn't surpass 30. Yeah, George Kittle had at least 1,000 receiving yards. Brandon Ayuk had at least 1,000 receiving yards. Deebo Samuel, I think, also had at least 1,000 receiving yards. And Christian McCaffrey had 2,000 all-purpose yards in 16 games.
Yeah, that's a lot of yards for the offense.
Yep. And Brock Purdy became the single-season leader in passing yards in 49ers history. And they have 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think those names that you just got done listing and their 1,000 yards and 2,000 yards definitely help with that,
Yeah.
Did you want to go over like the MVP and breakout and all that stuff just really quick?
So what did I say?
So, all right, I predicted 11 to 12 wins for the Niners. They ended up with 12. We were both right there, For MVP, I picked Trent Williams. You picked Brock Purdy. I think it's pretty clear it's Purdy, although I'd still say Trent Williams was a good pick,
Mm-hmm.
And McCaffrey as well,
Mm-hmm.
For breakout, you chose Ayuk. You're dead on,
Mm-hmm.
You also said Drake Jackson. My picks were
I was dead wrong about Drake Jackson. Like he had a fantastic week 1, and then I don't know what happened to him. I think he's on IR right now, but
Mhm.
he just he didn't live up to what I thought maybe he could be this season, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
And then my breakout picks were Jair Brown, Cleveland Farrell, and Javon Hargrave. So I say, Hargrave was a solid choice just because he was a new player. And then
Mhm.
Jair Brown, he's now a starter, or at least he's a forced starter because
Injury.
Hufanga. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, I have to say about Ayuk, I was all in on Brandon Ayuk this year. And I think he was playing for that contract. He's eligible for extension, I believe, after this year. It's going to be interesting to see what the 49ers do. And I would not like to see Brandon Ayuk leave, although I feel like traditional wide receivers are more replaceable than other positions. But, Ayuk is just such a fun player to watch. He's like easily one thing I want to do this offseason is I want to like rework our top 5 favorite players, on the current teams. I think Brandon Ayuk is clearly a top 5 favorite player for me. He's so fun to watch. Yeah.
This is his 4th season. So I don't remember if they
Picked
gave
up
him the
his
5th
5th year
option.
option.
Did they?
I don't remember. But if
Either way, they would have the franchise tag.
Ayuk averaged like 18 yards per reception this year, or somewhere in that ballpark. That's insane.
He and Kittle were insane as far as yards per catch.
Yeah. So could you imagine if Brandon Ayuk was not on the 49ers next year and he was on a team like the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, it wouldn't be cool. That
Dude,
would not be nice.
I'm telling you right now, if Ayuk goes somewhere else, he is going to be a superstar. He's already arguably one. He's like an underused superstar on this team. He's right now a star.
Crowded room. Yeah.
He is in a crowded room of stars.
Yeah. Yep.
If he goes anywhere else, he's going to be a superstar. So that's one thing to consider. Let's quickly go over the wild card matchups. I'll pull them up and share them on the screen, and we'll just kind of quickly give our predictions for the games.
I sent you a tweet that has a pretty good photo with every matchup in there.
Okay.
From ESPN. Pretty nice looking. Is there any noise in my background?
A little bit, but I think we can push through. It doesn't sound too bad.
Okay.
Okay. Wild card matchups. Let's go ahead and start with the AFC, and then we'll end with the NFC. We're just gonna go over round 1, and then we'll look at like a potential 49ers playoff roadmap after.
Yep.
So we've got Houston versus Cleveland. Who have you got, Mike?
I think this is the toughest matchup for me to pick. I think man, I wonder if they faced each other this season. I kind of feel like they didn't, but I was thinking they were going to face Jacksonville, Cleveland. I thought they were going to face Jacksonville, and there was a possibility they'd face the Colts. In either of those, I would have easily chose the Browns. With the Texans, I'm having a hard time. Stroud looked really good the other night. Oh, man. I really don't know who to choose. It's going to be at Houston. Wow. I'm assuming they're fully healthy, other than their quarterback. I'm choosing Cleveland.
I'm also choosing Cleveland. I think that defense is locked down. They're elite. AFC North is tough. They are a very tough division. Joe Flacco is playing fantastic, and I've seen him go on a playoff run. I don't want to see the same type of playoff run, but I think that Cleveland is good enough to beat Houston currently. And if Houston does win, it's going to be a CJ Stroud takeover.
Yeah, and that's very possible. I could easily see Houston winning this one too, but Yeah, I got the Browns in this one.
All right, let's go Chiefs versus the Dolphins. This to me is a coin flip right here. Although
Wow.
I think somebody sent it might have been Tyler who sent in the group chat. I guess the Dolphins are going to be facing a lot of injuries.
Especially on defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the way I look at the playoffs this year is anybody but the Chiefs, honestly.
hmm
And I don't want to see the Steelers win either because they don't really deserve it and they have way too many Super Bowl wins. But all I care about is the Chiefs losing. I would love for Miami to win this game, but I got the Chiefs.
You got the Chiefs?
I got the Chiefs, unfortunately.
Oh man, the Chiefs offense has been so bad, but Miami's on like a skid. They're like on a crash and burn right now, and injuries are not going to help that. I think I'm going to also go with the Chiefs. Travis Kelce is going to be coming off a week of rest. He's not the same player that he was, but yeah, it's going to be in Kansas City. I think that's a big deal. And to me, this game is still a coin flip. The Miami offense can absolutely, it can turn on at any moment.
Here's the thing about Miami. I think they're going to get Mostert and Waddle back. Hopefully that pushes them towards winning the game. I really hope Miami wins, but it's going to be at Kansas City in the cold. I don't know. I think Kansas City's experience will probably prevail,
And I think the NFL wants Mahomes to go a little deeper in the playoffs than just getting bounced the first round. So there might be a little Mahomes magic in there, as much as that might make you sick. But Tyreek Hill is returning to Arrowhead for a playoff game, obviously playing against the Chiefs this time. I was fully prepared to pick the Dolphins, but those injuries don't help. I'm going the Chiefs. All right. Buffalo versus Pittsburgh. I'm just going to say it. I'm picking Buffalo.
Yeah, myself as well. I don't see Pittsburgh doing any damage. Good for them for making the playoffs again under Mike Tomlin, but their offense isn't going to get it done against the Bills. And really what this sets up for me is probably Bills versus Chiefs. Luckily, it's at Bills in the divisional round, and then winner of Texans and Browns will face the Ravens unless Miami beats Kansas City. But yeah, Kansas City at Buffalo in the second round is pretty damn good. And then if we can possibly get Browns at Ravens, a divisional matchup, that's a fucking good pull,
Yeah. All right.
So
let's go over NFC. Tampa Bay versus the Eagles. Who are you going to pick, Mike? I know who I'm going to pick.
I wanted to hear yours first.
I think the Bucs are going to get it done.
Man.
I think the Bucs are going to do it. Yeah.
I think they're going to do it. I think the Eagles fucking stink right now. They fucking suck.
I think the Buccaneers are going to win. I think they're a better team right now.
Which is insane to say. Like, if we were going to say that the week before the Eagles faced the Niners, we would have been like, what are they smoking?
Yeah.
What are they smoking 8 weeks from now? Yeah, no, that's I don't know. It's at Tampa Bay, and I feel like somehow they will get it done. Somehow.
Yeah. Although the Buccaneers did like completely crap the bed against the Saints just a couple weeks, but the Saints are playing good right now. The Saints have been playing well. They're not in the playoffs, I notice, but
yeah, I'm gonna do something stupid right now. I'm gonna switch my pick. I'm picking the Eagles.
Are you?
Yeah. Only because I still like Jalen Hurts and all that. Like, I know I just said that they suck, but like they just have a really bad vibe right now. But I also feel like maybe they're that type of team that gets to the playoffs and they just like, all right, guys, we're back to being 0-0. It doesn't matter like what happened to the regular season happened. Here we are. It's time to just go win, and they get the job done this week. Although I like Tampa, and like my gut tells me, dude, Tampa might do this, I'm actually going to pick the Eagles. I think the experience, like, okay,
I want to as well, but I don't know, man.
Yeah,
Tampa Bay's been playing badly too. They barely beat the freaking Panthers. Now that I
was just going to say, like, the Eagles' experience in the playoffs will prevail, but also, I mean, Tampa Bay, they have players that have been winning the division 3 years in a row and going out and winning a Super Bowl just 2 or 3 years ago. So they have experience too. They very well can win this game, and Baker Mayfield's been playing great this season. And if they were to win this game, the Buccaneers should re-sign him to at least a 2-year deal, and good for him. But yeah, I'm gonna pick the Eagles.
I'm sticking Buccaneers. Yeah, for right now. If it changes, I'll tell you, but that's just kind of the vibe that I'm getting. Both teams, I think, are playing bad football the past. Eagles have been much longer that they've been playing bad football. Buccaneers have been like past 2 weeks, not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Detroit versus LA.
My favorite matchup.
Yeah, Stafford returning to Detroit for a playoff game.
I got the Lions.
Yeah.
What about you?
I've also got the Lions.
Okay. Because, there's a big part of me that's like, dude, the Rams might do this one. They might win it. They very well could.
I think Detroit's the one team that can match up with the Rams pretty well because I think they've got a pretty solid secondary to be able to cover, the Rams receivers. And, aside from that, I think Detroit's they've been having a great year. I don't think the Rams defense is going to be able to stop the Detroit offense. Aaron Donald might have a big game, against Jared Goff. He might sack him a couple times, but I like Jahmyr Gibbs to be the special weapon that can, get the Lions to run outside, run away from Aaron Donald. So,
yeah,
Lions.
I think these teams match up interestingly against each other, and then you also have the aspect of Stafford versus his old home team, and then really, I think the revenge game narrative here is for Jared Goff. Oh, you guys thought you could just ship me out and treat me like trash, but here I am.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have the high ground. I got the home field advantage, And I think really at the end of the day, for me picking the Lions, it's not only that I think they're a better team, but they're a pissed off team because of that Cowboys game a couple weeks ago, And
another thing about the Lions, dude, their fans are going to be wild. It's going to be a loud playoff game.
Oh yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait.
It's going to be a loud one. So,
yep.
And then Dallas versus Green Bay. I'm picking Dallas.
Yeah, I'm picking Dallas, but I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be closer than we think.
I don't think so.
I think it will be.
If it is, that is a bad look on Dallas. I think Dallas is gonna beat Green Bay pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of me hopes so, but I just think Green Bay's offense lately has been doing really good. But yeah, I got Dallas as well. And then really just last thing, as far as all these games, just consider how good of a draw these wildcard matchups are. Texans versus Cleveland, not very much to say there. If Deshaun Watson was still healthy, though, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit, what a matchup. Watson versus his old team that he begged to get off of, right? Had all that shit happen with him. Tyreek Hill versus the Chiefs. Buffalo and Steelers, whatever. But two very good AFC teams that have been very consistent lately. Tampa Bay versus Philly. That's a rematch of 2 years ago in the playoffs. Excuse me. Detroit versus LA. We already mentioned it. Stafford, Goff, McVay, so forth. And then Mike McCarthy versus his old team of the Packers. It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and look at a potential. Oh, okay. You picked Dallas too, right? But you said it's going to be closer. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look at a potential 49ers playoff roadmap, at least for the NFC. So based on the predictions that we just gave, and this will be quick. It really shouldn't even be its own topic. We have the Niners probably playing the winner of either the Buccaneers or the Eagles. Unless, there's an upset in one of these two games, the Niners will be playing against I'm thinking it's probably going to be Tampa Bay. For the divisional game. I would rather play against Philadelphia again, honestly, than to play against the Buccaneers.
Nah. I get it because you guys kind of killed the Eagles, but I don't know, man. I still think the Eagles on paper are that team that can at any given week do it, Whereas Tampa Bay, I just don't see that against the Niners, And the difference between Tampa Bay and Philly is Philly's pissed off against the Niners. Tampa Bay's not. Tampa Bay's just going to come into that game going, wow, here we are. Look at us. Oh, it's the Niners. Boom, they get killed. Whereas if it's Philly versus the Niners, it's like, all right, guys, let's go out there and let's fucking kill them. You remember what they did to us a couple weeks ago? Let's fucking destroy them. That's what it's going to be.
So this was the Niners versus Buccaneers this year. It was a lot closer game than the Eagles game was.
Right,
and
but that's the same final as the Niners or the Raiders versus Broncos this past week, and that was a straight up killing. I understand that you're going to pull up the Eagles game. It's going to be like, look at what we did to the Eagles, but like, dude, all it is game planning. All it is do you game plan the right way? Do you coach it right? Any given week, I think the Eagles can beat you guys. I do not see that for the Buccaneers.
I think the Eagles and the Buccaneers are both playing their worst football of the year.
100%. But again,
and AJ Brown just got hurt too.
Yeah, and that could be a big thing for sure. But I think if the Eagles were to walk into San Francisco, relatively healthy, they are a much bigger threat than the Buccaneers, in my opinion.
I think the Niners would want to play the Eagles more because of what happened last year in the playoffs, and I think the Niners would smoke them.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a bigger confidence booster, in my opinion, beating the Eagles down again, and a bigger satisfaction to them. Like instead of the Buccaneers, it's like, oh yeah, the winner of that division, Whereas the Philly, they're the defending NFC champions. Take them down.
Okay, so I would have the Niners probably above either of these two teams, which would mean they would be in the NFC Championship game. And this is looking way too far ahead. But it would be, just kind of the playoff scenario. The Niners would either play against Detroit or Dallas. I don't know, man. That's tough to think about. Like, both those teams are tough teams. I don't think they're as tough as the Niners, but there's one thing that I think about every time I think about a potential rematch against Dallas in the NFC Championship game. I think about Micah Parsons. Laugh now, cry later. And the Cowboys are playing really good football.
Yeah, I mean, that could be our first callback. Damn it. Hold on. Sorry. My throat is killing me right now.
Yeah, I bet your knees are too.
Wow. Yeah, I was sucking off COVID all week.
Yeah.
But damn it. That was a massive L.
Yeah.
Thanks. Fucking the week that you guys played the Cowboys, dude, I said it. I was like, man, that fuck Dallas shirt. That's something that you do when you beat them in the playoffs, not in week 4 of the regular season, So right now, to me, it looks very likely that it's Cowboys at Niners, NFC Championship, and the Cowboys are coming in way better than they were in week 4.
Oh, yeah, they're a pass-first team. They figured it out passing-wise.
They figured it out, and all they're going to be thinking about is fuck Dallas. So I'm not saying that Dallas should win that game, but that's just something.
In the history between these two teams, they've inflicted so much pain on each other in the playoffs. So what would be a greater pain than Dallas sending the Niners home? That in this year, that would stun Niner fans. And then we can't let it happen. We can't let Dallas go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Can't let it
that's
happen. It will be unforgivable.
yeah. If the Niners allowed Dallas to go to the Super Bowl and eventually win it, oh yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah, that's disgusting. So we're gonna end the show off on that. I'm gonna go throw up now. Yeah. And Mike is gonna go
Yeah.
put on some icy hot on his knees and put some vapor rub on his chest.
My knees are perfectly fine, but I am going to probably take some Mucinex.
Yeah. Well, I hope you feel
Yeah.
better, Mike. I hope everybody who checked out the stream had a great watch of the stream. We appreciate the continued support and the viewership, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day and rest of the week.
And may we find out who the national championship winner is tonight.
Yeah.
Whether it's Jim Harbaugh's Michigan or if it's Michael Penix Jr.'s Washington.
That'll be interesting. All right. Peace out, everybody. Thank you again. Catch you next time.